Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth, and we have a great show lined up tonight. And we're going to be talking to baseball lifer Stan Hough. But before we do that, just want to let everybody know that you can find this show here on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, as well as Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. With that said, we have a new baseball analyst. His name is Stan Hough. But before I bring him on, we have our crew, Eric Katz, Mr. Concrete Dump, and Rick Curdy. We all know Mr. Opinion. So welcome back, Eric and Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And, of course, Stan, the man. Here we go. Our new baseball analyst. Why don't you go ahead and give everybody an overview, Stan.
Okay.
Baseball life.
Well, I got drafted in 1974 in the January draft, second round, and signed with the Mets and went to spring training and ended up playing, for about 7 years in their organization, and from A to AAA, and got traded over to the Houston Astros in 1981, spring training for Bruce Bochy. Me and a guy named Randy Rogers for Bruce Bochy. And anyway, I went over to Houston, played a couple years over there, and then started coaching and coached up the ladder from A ball to AAA there too as well. And then in 1987, I got hired by the Texas Rangers to do their rookie league team, and Marty Scott hired me, and that went very well. And then I coached in AA the second year, and we won the Texas League in 1988, and 89, 90, and 91, I was the AAA hitting coach for Oklahoma City 89ers. Now, after that time, I stepped aside to finish a degree at Baylor, and it was a bad time to do it because they had a strike after that, and it was tough to get back in. I eventually got back in 1995. I was a pitching coach at Surrey in the Western League, and from there I went over to the Waterbury Spirit over in the Northeast League, and a couple of years, 97, 98 there. And then in independent ball, you don't have a minor league system, so you depend on scouting directors and minor league directors. So I was making all these calls to these guys to get players, and one of the guys I was talking to was Mark Nimmin with the New York Yankees. Well, I bothered him so much, he hired me with the Yankees. So I was over there a couple of years, then went over to the Montreal Expos and managed their AAA team in 2001. It was kind of breaking apart then. So I was the hitting coach in Clinton, Iowa in 2002, then went over to Baltimore in 2003. Now, after that, went to the Fort Worth Cats, and that was 2004 through 2007. So 2004 and 5, I was the third base coach and hitting coach, and Wayne Twilliger was our manager. And we won the Central League in 2005. And Twig was, at that time, what I remember was he was the oldest manager to win a professional championship, baseball championship. So, yeah, I believe he's like 79 then. And when he won, he decided to step down, and they hired me to manage in Fort Worth 06 and 07. Now, that year he stepped down, I kept waiting for him to call me back because I really wanted him to come back and coach if he wanted to. Well, about 2 weeks into it, he called me back and said, "Say, do you mind if I come back and coach with you?" I said, "I've been waiting for you to call me. I knew they said you wanted to do it, and I was waiting for you to call me." And he did, and we got back together, and we won in 06 and 07 too. And he was a great guy to have around, a great mentor and a great man. He was a really good baseball guy too. I'll tell you what, we had some help there. Barry Moss was our player personnel director, and Barry was he's a very wise baseball guy. And he played in the Cincinnati Reds organization. He hit really well. I said, "How come you didn't play in the big leagues?" He said, "Well, I couldn't beat out Pete Rose." Anyway, but he was a great help to me and Twig and getting players to Fort Worth and all that. And a little sidetrack here, Barry played in Moneyball. He was Scout Barry in Moneyball. And when I saw it and saw him on there, I didn't know he had done that. It was quite a surprise when I heard him talking to the actor. I can't even think what the guy's name was, but anyway, he was on there, and some of those guys on there were scouts as well. So it was a good movie to watch. It really was, and I enjoyed it. So that's pretty much my professional baseball career in a nutshell.
All right, let me go over certain things that we're going to address one at a time. Okay.
Sure.
We'll talk about your New York Mets from 74 to 81. I know you were there 7 years plus, and obviously you alluded to the fact that you were traded to Houston for Bruce Bochy. Let's talk about your relationship with Bruce Bochy. Have you had an opportunity to get to know him? And then I want to talk about your Willie Mays thing in a moment. Then the other guys can.
Yeah, well, he knew me and I knew him. That's about it. But what was funny? At one winter ball at the Anatole in Dallas, I was sitting outside talking with Wally Backman, and Bruce came out the door and he saw me, and he came back over to me. He goes, "Well, baseball hadn't been the same since that blockbuster trade." And of course, he went on to bigger and better things. And I was, he's a good man, and he did a great job too at San Diego and in San Francisco. So good for him. I mean, it's good that I feel proud that I know him.
Well, so when he won a World Series with the Giants, as you continued to realize that, hey, I was traded for a guy that subsequently won the World Series, what kind of a feeling did you have knowing that, man, this guy has come a long way?
Well, watching it, I watched every game. I knew some of the coaches there as well. And I was really and truly pulling for him the whole time. They had a superb ball club, but I was I believe they beat Detroit, didn't they? In one of those.
Yeah, sad but true, but yes, they did.
Yeah, and I was just because of our affiliation of being traded by each other was enough for me to really jump up and down for him when it happened. But yeah, it was great. It really was.
So Eric, you want to add anything?
Yeah. So what years did you work for the Yankees?
1999 and 2000.
So you were there for the 2 World Series rings with what was your impression of a young Derek Jeter? Did you know he was going to be a Hall of Famer?
I didn't know he was going to be a Hall of Famer, but he went hard every day, and he played. He was very consistent too, and he hit very well. I saw him play in a lot of spring training games, and he did his job professionally as any true professional would do it. So there's no nonsense about him. He got out there and got after it. So that was it was fun to watch.
Did you ever have any interactions with the boss?
Yes, I did.
Well, were they pleasant?
Well, the boss was pretty much, yeah. George Steinbrenner he demanded discipline, and that's fine. I think that was really one of the attributes that I really admired him for, because he didn't put up with that kind of nonsense. I mean, guys had to have their hair cut. They had to have their pants bloused 4 to 6 inches over the stirrups. You wore a navy blue shirt underneath your uniform. It wasn't any other color. It was a Yankee navy blue undershirt. You wore if you went out in public, you had to have a collared shirt on, and if you wore shorts, it had to be Bermuda shorts, and you had to have socks on with sandals. So he expected everybody to be first class and act like first class, and that part I really liked about him. He was a very demanding guy, though. I mean, the first interaction I had with him was straight up front in my face. And it wasn't about me. It was about a kid that got his stuff standing out by the complex there in Tampa. I was just standing out there. This kid takes his stuff, throws it down, he goes and runs to the fence and back. And I'm watching him like, no big deal. Well, the next thing you know, Steinbrenner's standing right next to me, and he said, "Who is that guy?" And I said, "I don't know, sir." He said, "Get him over here. I want him over here right now." And I said, "Okay, hey, come on over here." So he came over and said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Boss wants to talk to you." He said, "Son, do you want to be a Yankee?" And I'm standing there in the middle of this, and I didn't realize what was going on right then. He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Is that your shoes and your jacket right there on the ground, laying out on the ground?" He goes, "Yes, sir." He goes, "That's not how we do it over here. And if you want to stay a Yankee, you better do it the right way." So he pointed over to the fence, the screen. All the shoes were they were by the fence, and they were in order, and everybody's jacket was folded nicely on top of them. And it wasn't, and the guy got the message. He got the message. Sure did. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a funny story now. We were meeting, I was the manager of Greensboro, and we were meeting one night, and we're going over our clubs, and everybody that's there, who's who of Yankees, was in that room. Now, they had a door on behind me that was going out to the field. And on the catty corner on the other side of the room, there was a door from the office. And that's where everybody came in from the office, and all the guys, all the coaches and instructors came in from the outside there where I was. We were sitting by a huge director's table, and there were leather-bound chairs. This was top notch. It looked like a board of directors room. Well, we got to talking about, they asked me, I was sitting right across from Billy Connors, who I'd known since the Mets days. Well, they had asked me about the Greensboro team and what I thought about, the players that we had and all that. And as I finished, I heard the door behind me shut, and I leaned back in that chair, and I kept going. I didn't realize it. That chair just kept going. So Arnie Baylor sitting right next to me, and he started laughing, and I hit something. When I turned around, I had knocked Steinbrenner into the wall. I looked at Billy Connors across the table, and he's doing this. He's going, "Oh, no. He's doing this right here." And he turned around and said, "Okay, name, rank, and serial number." And I said, "I don't think I'm going to tell you who I am right now." And we left it at that. And Arnie started laughing. I said, "Hey, man, take it easy. It's this isn't good." But he, dusted himself off, went and sat down. Later on, Arnie said, "Hey, you've only been with us a month, and you nearly got fired."
Wow.
Did he?
He was, he was a demanding guy, but, I think it was his team, and he wanted to win. I don't blame him for a lot of it.
Well, let me tell you this. When I was covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees back in the day, and I met George Steinbrenner a couple times, but one time I was sitting in the stands and bumped into him, interviewed him. I asked him the easy questions like the minor leagues and all that other stuff. But when I got to the manager question, he was done with me because he wanted to talk about it. He said, "I think we're done for this interview. Thank you very much." The best part about the whole thing is Ted Koppel, when Todd of Nightline, Koppel of Nightline had him on it as well. George Steinbrenner really hammered Ted, so I didn't feel so bad. But yeah, he was a nice guy at heart. But when you talk about something like that, he could turn really quickly. So, Rick, anything you want to ask about Bochy before we talk about Willie Mays?
Yeah, I mean, you said, how long were you with the Greensboro Bats? I'm in Charlotte, about an hour and a half away. So they're now called the Grasshoppers, but at that time they were the Bats.
Hang on, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
99 and 2000. 1999 and 2000.
And what like guys did you see there that were like became big stars from that organization that you said, wow, this guy's gonna be a huge star?
Willie Mo Pena was there. Yeah, I had him in 2000. There was a couple pitchers there too, but really he stood out the most. I mean, this guy was a man among boys. Although he was a young guy, he was built like a grown man, like a veteran. Anyway,
All right, so,
he ended up with Cincinnati, I believe.
Yeah, I remember him. He was fantastic.
Also played for the Red Sox.
So let's go ahead and shift, Stan. Okay, with your time in the Mets, you said you were there, and 4 times you had Willie Mays with your locker right next to you. Why don't you talk?
Yeah, I went to Major League Camp multiple times, and this one particular year, my locker was right next to Willie Mays, who was a coach on the team. He's a great guy. We got along very good. You know, all that time, a whole month sitting next to Willie Mays, and I never even thought to ask him for his autograph. But every day, you know, we were talking about something, and mostly it's about golf. When they have about baseball. He came in one day, had a shoebox, and he threw them at me, and I caught it. There's a bunch of batting gloves in there. I didn't use batting gloves. He said, "You play golf, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I try." He said, "There you go. You got some golf gloves." And you know, he had a lot of these sponsors, and you know, this stuff that they give him for free. He can't keep it all, so he was giving it away. He gave me a whole box of that stuff. So, and to be honest, I think I still got it somewhere. But anyway, I thought that was good. He was a good guy. He helped me out a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, have a locker next to Willie Mays. How many people can really say that? I think that's incredible, and I definitely think that he would appear in a lot of Mount Rushmores when you're talking about some of the greatest players that ever played the game. Not only was he athletic,
he was a genuinely nice guy too.
Yeah, I've heard that.
He was a good guy.
Never got a chance to meet him, but all the stories I've heard about Willie Mays to me have been nothing but positive.
Very good.
Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle were my favorite players growing up, and that was it. I like to watch both those guys, and I had other ones, but those two for sure.
And you got the irony when you talk about those two players simultaneously was when Bowie Kuhn went out there and banned them because they were just working as ushers for gambling, and then Peter Ueberroth.
They were just making extra money. You know?
Yeah, well, that's what they were doing, but Peter Ueberroth thinks that, nah, you guys come back. Bowie Kuhn.
That was Bowie Kuhn, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, all they were doing, like I said, was just making extra money, like you say, Stan. But you know, again, for you to be able to have an opportunity to hang out with Willie Mays for about a month, to me, it was just pretty cool. I think one of my favorite stories I like to tell people, you know, was when I spent a week in North Miami hanging out with Muhammad Ali for about a week, and that was unbelievable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at that time, you know, we were doing an exhibition comeback, and I decided to write a story as Ali on the comeback trail. It was just an exhibition for charity, and but anytime you have an opportunity to go out there and hang out with somebody that's a Hall of Fame person as well as a Hall of Fame player, it's pretty cool. So, Eric, any questions about Willie Mays before we move on to something else?
Did you ever get the opportunity to ask him how he caught the drive off Vic Wertz?
No, we didn't talk about it.
But when you met,
it never came up. So I remember looking at that, and you know, it was against Cleveland, wasn't it, in the World Series?
Yeah, 54.
Yeah, it was the year I was born.
What's the one thing you learned from Willie during your month with him?
More than anything, you know, he taught me a stance at the plate where he turned his feet more towards the pitcher. And he had a square stance to the pitcher, but his feet were turned virtually all the way to the pitcher. And I asked him why. He said, because when you swing, your hips are automatically open. You already got your feet in the position you have to turn them. I couldn't do it, though. So I ended up turning my feet just a little bit towards first base and staying on the balls of my feet, and it worked out pretty good. Matter of fact, It really helped me get the bat quicker to the ball because that was a shorter approach. And I thanked him for that.
And Rick?
Yeah. How did you ever play golf with him? And is he a great golfer?
No, but when I was in Jackson, he used to come to Jackson as an instructor, and he rarely did he come on the field because he was out playing golf at the Jackson Country Club. And he loved it. He loved that country club, so he came there a lot. He brought his clubs every time he came, too. So
that's pretty awesome.
I don't need any stories on him because he did help us in baseball some. But most of his time was spent on that golf course in Jackson.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
We didn't mind it.
Let's move on to the Fort Worth Cats Baseball Club. I know, Stan, you alluded to it a little bit here. You were the hitting coach, third base coach, the manager, and of course, but the biggest intrigue about that whole thing was you talked about being the first manager for Max Scherzer, and then you also worked with Luke Hochevar, the Kansas City Royals. And then we'll get to Wayne Terwilliger in a moment, but talk about Max Scherzer back in the day. You know, what was he like coaching and managing?
Well, we got him from the Scott Boris's group because we had Barry had made a deal with Scott Champerino, and it didn't work out in the draft. So he'd already, gotten an agent, so he couldn't go back to school. Hochevar was first, and then it was Max. So with Max, though, he had gone to the University of Missouri, I believe, couldn't go back, but he came to us, and I told him we're going to treat it just like we would with any guy coming in. We're going to limit their pitch counts. We're going to limit their innings pitched. We're going to, let them get their feet wet in this pro sector and move on from there. Now, Max got 4 or 5 starts with us, and then he got drafted, and it was a good business move because they upped his signing bonus by about $2 million. So it was a good move on his part. But Max, while the limited time that I had him there, he's a very intense guy. I mean, he's all business completely. And I like that part about him. He's so intense, he wanted to literally go out and kick everybody's butt. I mean, in a literal sense, he wanted to fight them. I mean, that was what was the kind of stuff that was coming out. But, after visiting with him a little bit, it was more like he wanted to compete like he was fighting. And it was, I appreciated it really because I kept telling all the guys over there, I said, this is the kind of will you got to have to play at a higher level. And you might take some notes, So he actually got beat one game there, and he got the loss. I can't remember who it was against, but he didn't win every game he pitched. He lost one time there. Now, Luke Hochevar, when Luke was there, he got 4 or 5 starts, and he did a fantastic job. And this guy was a workout guy, big time. Well, so was Max, but Luke was a big time workout guy. And I think Luke's with Kansas City right now or somebody. At least that's who drafted him, number 1. And I once again told all the guys that I had, when these guys pitch and you're playing, there's going to be 30, 40 scouts in the stands. They might see something in you when they didn't come to see you. So put on your hitting shoes and put on your hard playing shoes and let's get after it. So, and we did pretty good when they were in town too, because all those guys wanted to play really well in front of all those scouts.
So tell me, are you in touch with Max at all, or did you ever build a relationship through the years?
Well, no, I tried to, congratulate him on his Cy Youngs and all that, but never heard back. But that's okay. I mean, he's busy. That's fine.
Okay. Eric, anything you want to add?
Is the fire that he brought to when you were coaching him, is the fire still there that was there then? Is it still there now?
To me, looking from the outside looking in from afar right now, I'd say completely, yes. He does not like to lose, and he's hard-headed about it too. So, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that I like that about a player. I like players that they'll leave it out on the field and not bring it back into the locker room. I mean, some guys come back in the locker room, can't wait to shower and hit the streets and get that going to hit the bars and all that stuff. That wasn't the idea, though. I mean, with those guys that had that intensity, that stuff wasn't going on.
Was he
Rick,
the best?
man,
Was he the best player you ever coached?
Who, Max?
Yeah.
Well, he's one of them. I can't say he was the best because I had too many. I helped. I had Juan Gonzalez. I had Sammy Sosa, Pudge Rodriguez. I had Chad Kruger as a catcher that did a really good job. Who else? I helped a bunch of those guys. I'd like to say that I helped them. Let me put it that way. John Gibbons was with us, and he went from throwing out 9% of his runners the year before to 38% because we got out there and worked on it. So, and Gibby ended up managing Toronto, I believe.
Yeah, I know. I had a chance to talk to John. It's how I ended up getting the interview. I was wearing an actual USF shirt, and he talked about USF. Hey, because he pointed out what I was wearing over. I don't remember where we were at. I think, well, regardless, it might have been Lakeland, someplace on the trail. But when he saw that, yeah, you might have forget what it worked. Oh, he gave me all the time I want. John, he's a class guy. So, all right. So, Rick, you want to ask him before we talk about Wayne Terwilliger at all?
Yeah, I was wondering, like when you had Max Scherzer, did you ever thought he'd be this multi-Cy Young Award Hall of Fame guy? Or was he just like another pitcher just trying to make it into the big leagues? Or there's something special about this guy?
No, he was intense. His intensity was 10 times more than what I had. And that intensity was, it showed on the mound. He went after every hitter like it was his last one. And I used to turn around and say, hey, you guys watching this? Make sure you're watching this and taking notes. Because it was impressive. The same thing with Luke. It was impressive, definitely. And both those guys were number one picks, and I can see why. They're intense, and they got after their business like it was their business and nobody else's.
Yeah, more or less, you can classify them as basic bulldogs. So, yeah, when you think about it.
That's a good analogy. Bulldogs.
Yeah, that's what they are. I've seen a lot of those guys in my years covering baseball. And by the way, Stan, for wherever it's worth, I've only been covering it for 42 years. And I grew up in Metro Detroit, so I get it. All right, so let's talk about a guy that, since we both have an appreciation of the Ranger organization, we can address it now. You alluded to it earlier. Now we'll go into a little bit more depth with that. Wayne Terwilliger, I remember the first time I ever bumped into him was at Pompano Beach Municipal Stadium when the Rangers went ahead and conducted spring training there. But you said 79 years of age, the oldest guy to win a pro championship. I'll just ask you this on my own, basically. What did you learn from Wayne Terwilliger? Because after all, the guy has a wealth of knowledge.
Well, the takeaway is how I watched him work and what he did and when he did it and how he did it. One thing that he didn't mind squeezing early in a game to get a run in. And we had conversations about that. And I looked at it as you use that to win a ball game in the last inning. When you have no other shots at it, you got a tie game, it could go into extra innings, and you're the home team, you get a chance to squeeze a run in to win the ball game. All right, so we talked about that, and he said, when you got two guys that are pitching really well, you got to find a way to get a run across the board. That's all. And nobody considers a squeeze early in the ball game. We squeezed against a really good team. I can't remember who it was now, but it put us ahead 1-0. The end of that game, it was 1-0. We won the game in the fourth inning. And that was, Twig was a Marine. He was a Marine. He was at Iwo Jima, and he told me one time. He said he wouldn't give anything. He wouldn't trade his baseball career for his time in the Marines, because he felt like that was the best part of his life. And I understand my dad was in the Navy and landed Marines at Iwo Jima. My dad comes to one ball game in Fort Worth, and those two got to talking in the clubhouse, and I had to go back in to get Twig out there on the field because we're getting ready to start the game. And I told Dad, go up in the stands. You can't stay here. All right. They were talking about their time in Iwo Jima. And what Dad did as a coxswain of a landing craft boat in the Navy, and what Twig was doing as an infantryman in Iwo Jima. And there was some pretty hair-raising stories there. But one thing about Twig, no nonsense. There was no play with him. When it was work and work on top of work when the game started. Now, I used to run things by him, and he'd give me explanations. I knew when to do it. I knew when not to do it. And more than anything, how he managed, how he handled himself, I learned more from him than I did with everybody that I'd been with. And I already managed in AAA too. There were some takeaways there, some mistakes I made in AAA that I felt like, we'd go over them and he'd throw out, well, consider this. What could you have done here in this situation and that? And why didn't you try this? Because you got to look at we're playing a percentage game, and it's percentages are in your favor to do something, do it.
Well, nowadays, Stan, it's common for managers to be in their 70s to manage a game, but for a guy like him to win a championship at the age of 79 is pretty impressive accomplishment.
Well, he threw batting practice.
Yeah.
He was the first one out there throwing batting practice every day to extra guys. And think about that. How many times do you see a 79-year-old man in 100-degree heat and the humidity throwing batting practice to players? You don't see it. 79-year-old men are usually watching, some game show or something, or some daytime drama on TV, or playing dominoes or something, right? Well, he was out there throwing batting practice, hitting fungos, and is active and is vibrant and with vitality as all those players did. And they appreciated it too. I got to tell you, when I took over in 2006, and he stepped aside that after we won the Central League in 2005, we were playing along. He came back as a coach, and I wanted him to come back because indirectly or directly, he was a mentor to me as far as, am I doing this right? What am I doing? I'm just like throwing stuff back and forth. He never said I was doing something wrong. He said, you might want to try this or try that. All right. Mm-hmm. So we had those discussions. I understood. He said, he did tell me one time in Shreveport, he said I was doing a good job. And he said he appreciated me asking him back. He did say that while they were stretching in the outfield. And I was humbled by that statement. But Twig was a sharp baseball guy, and he helped a lot of people. He helped a lot of ball players. I know that. Now I'll tell you, here's a funny story real quick. When they were building LaGray Field in Fort Worth, they're putting a new stadium up. We were in double wides, as that was our locker room, right? So in the manager's room, we had a big couch. Bobby Bragan would come in, and let me see, who was the other guy? Well, anyway, we were he was a manager that got punched for the Rangers. It was Frank Lucchese. Okay, so we're in this double wide, and the Twig's over by the wall. He's got his hat down. He's taking a little cat nap. Dan Smith, the pitching coach, is getting his pitching lineup ready to go. And I'm on this couch, and I got Bobby Bragan on my left and Frank Lucchese on my right. Two guys that managed in the big leagues with multiple teams, right? Well, I got this big baseball book, and it's talking about Mickey Mantle hitting that 565-foot home run out of Clark Griffith Stadium on April 17th, 1953. Anyway, and who he hit it. Well, that's not. Wait a minute. I'll go into that in a minute. But after I said all that, I said, "What do you think, Frank?" Frank tells me his Mantle story. All right. No, Bobby. I said, "Bobby, what do you think?" He tells me his Mantle story, and then Frank, he goes into his Mantle story. So Twig was waking up. I said, "Twig, did you hear that story about Mantle hitting that home run out of Clark Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C.? He said, "Yeah, it was the damnedest thing I ever saw." I said, "You let me tell this whole story, and you saw it." He said, "Yeah, I was playing second base that day."
Wow, that's incredible.
And I said, "Okay, who was the pitcher?" He said, "Chuck Stobbs, lefty." He said, "We gave him a lot of crap about it, too." He said, "Well, I struck him out a lot, too, but he didn't live that one down for a long time." But I thought that was kind of funny. And when I said, "You were playing second base," I looked down in the book, and it looked just like him. Could barely tell, but that was his profile. He was in that picture.
Yeah, the one thing about baseball, and I know a lot of times the focus is on managers as well as the big leagues, but when you've got guys like Wayne Terwilliger out there, these are the guys that are behind the scenes. You know who they remind me of? Like the producers of a radio show that don't get the attention that they properly deserve. But I'll tell you, the people that they work with are the ones that give them credits for sure. And Wayne Terwilliger, being a baseball lifer in his own right till 79, to me is definitely the definition of a baseball lifer for sure. So as we move on to the Montreal Expos, okay, I know you have some good stories here. Really enjoying having you on here. It's an awful lot of fun. Not that I wouldn't have surprised after what we did on Sunday, talking for the better part of 2 hours, and we're going to be doing more. But all right, we'll talk about your Expos tenure, January of 2001 to December 2001, managing at a double A team at Ottawa. Okay. So meanwhile, we'll talk about Milton Bradley, Terry Francona, and as Rick Curdy kindly mentions, this guy is a loose cannon. But you talk about Bradley looking up to Ron Washington, and he got paid $30 million for Ed Lynch. So why don't you describe to the audience the stories that surround Milton Bradley? Because I know there's a lot of them, and I want to make sure that we keep everything in the proper chronological order about what Milton Bradley was all about.
Well, obviously he's in the big leagues with Montreal, but whatever happened up there, he got sent to me in Ottawa, and they told me he's not coming back. So it was Jim Beattie told me we got to play him to trade him, but if he doesn't hustle and you need to take him out of the game, we won't be coming back on you about that. But he's got to hustle, and we got to play him. All right. Well, when Milton got there, he had 72 hours to report. When I got the phone call that he's coming, he's got 72 hours to report. He was there within the hour. I mean, Ottawa is not far from Montreal. So he drove over there, and he was there that day. Now, I called him in the office, and I said, "Well, it's obvious you're not going back to the big leagues with Montreal, so I've got to play you to trade you, and I'm going to try to get you traded. And I'll help you as long as you try to help us. Help yourself and help us. I will help you. And what that means is you're going to play hard. You're going to hustle. If you don't hustle, I'm going to take you out of the game where you stand." He just shook his head. Yeah. Okay. Well, we going along, and he's carrying the team. And one night, I can't remember who we were playing, but there were 2 outs, a man on second, and Milton's up at the plate batting left-handed, and he skied a fly ball. I mean, he just got under it, but he hit a line drive straight up. Had he been up a little bit, it'd have been a line drive straight out of the ballpark. But I'm watching this ball coming down behind second base. I look down, and he isn't even running. So I I didn't know what to think. Wait a minute, that ball's in fair territory. He's taking his gloves off here. He's got the bat. He was mad because he didn't hit a home run. So I told Dan McKinley, get your glove and go play his position. Tell him he's done. Tell him to come see me. Well, Carl Pavano was on the team, and he was standing there, and he said something like, "What are you going to do, Skip?" I said, "I don't know, but please, I don't need the help. I'll figure it out before he gets here." Well, when he got to the dugout, you could hear a pin drop. It was that quiet. And he said, "Why did you take me out of the game?" Not really knowing what to say, it just blurted out. I said, "Well, I thought you were tired. You hit that ball in fair territory and you didn't run. I thought, well, you're tired. Come on in, sit down." Well, he started going to the clubhouse, and I said, "That's the worst mistake you can make. So come over here and sit down." So he sat down. And at the end of the game, it called him in and said, "I told you, if you're not going to play hard, I'm going to take you out of the game where you stand. Now, I did it, and I'm going to do it again if it happens. You're going to play tomorrow night. But don't do that again." That's all. It's nothing personal. It's just that I want everybody on this team to hustle. All right. He playing good. Well, we got to play him to trade him. So we go over to Syracuse, and I look in the stands, and the only guy sitting there is Terry Francona. Now, Terry was a special assignments scout with the Cleveland Indians then. He just got let go by the Boston, and I guess they made a position for him with Cleveland. Well, I had been reading the paper that morning, and Kenny Lofton was hitting 260. He's an older guy. He's a center fielder, and he had about 3 or 4 home runs, and he's got a $7 million option that they're going to have to pick up the next year. I looked at that, and I thought, my gosh, Milton could be that guy. And when we got to the ballpark and we're taking batting practice, there's Francona, Cleveland Indians. And what I just read, I put them 2 to 2 together. I called Milton over here. I said, "You want to play for the Cleveland Indians?" He goes, "What, for real?" I said, "Yeah, for real." I said, "Look, the guy is here to see you play." I said, "If you've never kissed somebody's ass before, I want you to take a crash course while you walk over there and him and tell him you love the Cleveland Indians and go make your deal." He goes over there and talks to Francona. And somebody had to go get him into the clubhouse after batting practice was over with, because we're getting ready to play the game, and he's still out there talking to him. 10 days later, they traded for him. He went over to Buffalo, and he was kicking our tail. They were still playing him in the league. He went over there, and Eric Wedge had him over there. And what happened after that? That's on Milton. I mean, he couldn't get along with nobody left. I do remember I got a call from people in Kansas City when I was working. I was doing some audit work, and they put me on a speakerphone. Anybody with Kansas City was listening to this conversation. And the guy asked me, he said, "You managed Milton. Tell us, is he a good guy to get or what?" I said, "Yeah, as far as playing wise goes, he's going to carry your team. But that's a makeup issue that can't be overlooked. I mean, he has not gone along with anybody. It's on you, though. It's up to you. If you want him, go get him." But he said, "Do you have any problems with him?" I said, "No, I had one issue with him, but we ironed it out." But anyway, that's the way it went. They decided not to go get him at that point. And that time, I think that's when he went over to the Texas Rangers. So Ron Washington and I were teammates. We played against each other, and we were teammates in AAA, and I coached him in AAA with the Rangers. So I know Ron Washington very well. He's a good guy, outstanding guy. And, he's a real positive influence, too. And I thought when Milton went over to Texas, this is perfect for him. He can relate to Ronnie. Ronnie can relate to him. Well, I think, and then Ed Lynch dropped a $30 million contract in front of him as a free agent. He jumped at that money. I just, back in hindsight, I wish he'd stayed with the Rangers, to be honest with you. But that's what's happened. So anyway.
Eric, you want to add anything to this?
with everybody having, obviously his problems have been well documented over the years. How do you feel knowing that you were probably the only manager or the only person in baseball probably to get through to him?
I don't know that I got through to him because I told him what I was going to do and I did it. I don't know about how it was in the major leagues. I don't know if they sat on him or they didn't, but I know one thing. He had a short fuse and it was always lit. It was any minute it's going to blow up. So I only had him a couple months, maybe not even that long. So I can't say that I had any influence on him at all. But other than the fact that I did take him out of the game, he questioned it, and I told him why. You're tired. We talked about it later, and we got over it. It wasn't like I was, trying to be mean to him or anything or discipline him or anything like that. I did what I told him I was going to do, and that's how I've managed. Guys, you don't have to be good to hustle. So get on it. Let's go. We got to show we can run, we can do things. But he has the ability to do all that, and he decided not to do it that night. So it got taken care of.
Anything you want to add, Rick?
Yeah, with Milton Bradley, it sounds like he had like all the talent in the world. He just, I guess maybe his personality didn't allow it. Do you think it was like a waste of talent? Do you think he could have been a big superstar in the majors if he had curtailed his attitude?
Yes. Oh, he'd have been one of the biggest ever. He decided to have to cop an attitude everywhere he went, and he made everybody not like him. I mean, it's like, when you're kids and you play pickup baseball, and the best kid's a bully. Well, he gets picked last, and he can't understand why. Well, that's why. Nobody wants that kind of individual around them. And I'm not speaking out of turn here. He made his own way on that deal. I mean, plenty of ball teams gave him a chance. That's all. That's the best thing to say.
Milton Bradley reminds me a little bit of Dennis Rodman, although, and I'll tell you why I mentioned this analogy. First of all, Ron Washington was like a father figure from what you're describing, Stan, to Milton Bradley, but Chuck Daly was a father figure to Dennis Rodman.
Right.
And when Chuck Daly left the Pistons, Rodman didn't get along with Ron Rothstein, and of course he went on and was a loose cannon. But to Dennis's credit, though, wherever he went, the teams were better because he's an incredible defensive player, rebounder, and he did the intangibles make people better. And not lose sight of the fact that Dennis won 5 championships. And Phil Jackson was just a master psychologist to get through them. So I don't want to throw that analogy out there. Now, one of the things I really want to talk about tonight, which is really, really neat, is when you and I worked in the same organization together, not knowing one another. And when you talk about the fact, folks, that I met Stan Hough on LinkedIn, all you folks out there that don't have LinkedIn, you don't realize how you connect professionally with people. And I've met a lot of guests here through LinkedIn. And of course, this broadcast on social media is actually being broadcast on LinkedIn as well as Twitter, as well as our YouTube channel. And I'll get to the other things in a moment. But think about it. I'm talking to a guy that was in the same organization that I was in, okay? I worked with Gastonia, the Rangers, from 1987, from January until September. One season was all I needed. Yes, I got to hang out with Max Patkin. I got to see a PA get kicked out of a game because he was whistling 3 blind mice. And then when he got thrown out, it was a big-time story.
We heard about that where I was. We heard all about that.
Yeah, I was there. So the best part about it for me was I ended up doing the PA announcing the rest of the year after he got run out of there. So I didn't have the microphone there. But now let's talk about the players that obviously you coach in the rookie league, and then they ultimately came here. I'm going to list off a bunch of players right now, okay? And there were 11 that I notated. You have Bob Malloy, Dean Palmer, Wayne Rosenthal, Wilson Alvarez, Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez. There was Chino Canajilla, Ray Sanchez, Bill Hasselman, Roger Pavlik, Terry Matthews. Now, mind you, I mentioned 11 guys, and this is a team that lost 90 games. And when I told the owner, Jack Farnsworth, just so you know, Chino Kanahia during the old, spring thing, get everybody to know each other. I said, by the way, I worked in the Florida State League the year before, and Kanahia lost 90 games. Jack Farnsworth nearly blew a gasket. Now, what's so enjoyable about my experience in Gastonia was I enjoyed working with Max Packton, the entertainer, but I became good friends with Bob Feller because this Farnsworth guy actually had connections to get him there. So with that said, okay, you had these guys, and then I had them. Let's talk about the Texas Rangers and the Gastonia Rangers. And, we don't have to get into an hour discussion about the players, but name a few that stood out to you.
Well, we had, I didn't realize this, but they said we had a bad draft in 1987. Well, what we got from that draft, 11 players off that Gulf Coast League team ended up in the big leagues. And I don't see that as being a bad draft. And you had about the same or more in Gastonia that same year.
Right.
So usually when you got prospects on a team, on a minor league team, it's probably 3 or 4, maybe 5. And your support staff is there to play ball and, support those players too, by the teamwork that you do. Well, when you got 11 of them, though, I mean, we had Brian Bohannon, we had Kevin Belcher.
Wow.
Who else? Some of these guys. Look, this was brought up to me 2 years later, and when I was in Oklahoma City, when Perry Hill was a roving infield instructor, and we were talking about it, and he said, you did a pretty good job. I said, what are you talking about? They said it was a bad draft. He said, well, let's go down the list. And he had a list with him that he dug out in the locker room. He said, 11 guys off your team went to the big leagues. I didn't realize it, but he was right. It did. Kevin Mamahat went to the big leagues with the Yankees later on. He was with me, and I can't think of some of those guys though, but it was he was right. He was correct.
When you look at a list like that, and I got to just isolate a few guys, Dean Palmer had a good career.
Oh, man.
Wayne Rosenthal, every time I come across players I work with, when I want an interview, hey, whatever you want, we were always there for you.
Dean Martin. Dean had a quick bat. He had a very quick bat. He hit one of the longest home runs I've ever seen in Oklahoma City off of one of our former players. Dean Palmer comes up to the plate, and I'm coaching first base. He hits the ball out. It's 320 feet over the fence, but it was going up when it went out. Now, at All Sports Stadium, there is a kind of a levee, like with a road there, and then another levee that goes up to Interstate 44. Right. It had rained, and the ball went and stuck in the mud on the levee by I-44. Jeez. So it was, it was 330 feet. It was 320 feet to the fence, and we tape measured. It was 210 feet further. So he hit it 530 feet, and it was stuck in the mud. That's how we knew how far it went, because when it hit, it stayed right there. Right. And Scott May was a good guy, great guy, but he lived by that fastball, and he said, I'm going to just go fastball with you guys. And Palmer turned on him like it was a batting practice pitch. And I mean, he hit it into the night, and it went into the night, and we found it the next day on that second levee.
Well, a lot of people can say what they want about the players and all that. I mean, many of them had good careers, but But say what you want about Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez. I know they're linked to steroids, but forget about that for a moment. We're not talking about steroids. We're talking about the players that made it to the big leagues that
Well,
accumulate.
one thing, let me. Here's what I know. I know Sammy was linked to the steroids. I'm not sure about Juan though. I'm really not.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, one of my favorite stories about Sammy Sosa and Gastonia is we have 2 games left to go. Okay. And the Rangers ran out of dirt. And Nina Farnsworth at the time was helping run it with her husband, Jack, who, wasn't in the greatest condition. And Sammy and I developed a good friendship during the course of the season. We had a lot of fun. And I would ultimately get an interview with him when he was with the Cubs. And I had to pull a few strings when I said, "Hey, Sammy, what's going on?" And he gave me this old wide smile, unbelievable. I said, "All right, lady, you now believe I was his former PR guy." And I got a one-on-one interview with him. That was a favorite story. But Sammy would tell the owner, Nina, you cheap, because that woman wouldn't even invest into a couple bags of dirt with 2 games. And I'll tell you, when the Rangers got wind of it, they weren't too happy with those owners. So, but, let's face reality. Juan Gonzalez didn't want to play at Comerica Park because his statistical numbers were going to take a hit. Mike and Rick, I'm going to give you a moment to comment on that. Mike Gillich offered him a lot of money to be a part of it because the fences were so far back that he was really interested in doubles and triples like Miguel Cabrera was. Miguel didn't care as long as he put the bat on the ball and it went everybody. But can you imagine this? So, I mean, Sammy Sosa, we know, had a cork bat incident. Say what you want, but, when you're caught with cork, you're caught with cork. And Juan Gonzalez, unless he played in Cleveland or Texas or these hitter-friendly, he was a little intimidated. But can you believe, though, when I talk about these type of players, that many of them had really productive careers, especially, and I'm singling out Sosa and Gonzalez as well.
Right. Well, I mean, what you thought they might do, most of them did. And, we had some pretty good pitchers, too, that when I was with the Rangers, and they did a good job when they went to the big leagues, too. And, being in AAA, we got a lot of those guys coming down to rehab. We had Goose Gossage one year, which I got along with him really good.
Better than I am. Yeah. I'll tell you Goose Gossage's story. One time I'm trying to interview the guy with the Yankees. He was giving me short answers. I said, "Goose, you got to do better than that, or I'll put words in your mouth and I'll say whatever you're thinking." And then at that point, when I gave him a look that could burn through rubber, he opened up a little bit because nobody wanted to be quoted. And I may have been a young reporter, and Eric and Rick, but I knew a lot of tricks. But I learned from some of the best people out there. And listen, when you learn from Ken Nigro, well, I don't know if you ever heard of him, and Tony DeMarco, just to name a couple of guys, that they teach you that you got to dig a little harder. But I love your Goose Gossage's story, but he didn't want no part of what I was about to do to this guy. But anyway, I didn't interrupt you, but when you triggered me with Rich Goose Gossage, so I
well, he's one of my favorites anyway.
But as far as these players, so you're saying that you're really not surprised that many of them did pretty well of the 11 that I mentioned?
No, because they were doing well against their peers and where they were, and I just felt like they were going to go further. Matter of fact, I got some reporter asked me one time about Juan Gonzalez, and I said, "I think he's going to be a superstar." He said, "Well, what do you know about superstar?" Well, I didn't explain it. But, when you got a guy going to the plate with 2 outs and a man on third base, and that's your winning run, and this guy's hitting a double off the wall or getting or taking a walk where it walks in a winning run or hitting a 3-run home run when you're down 2, Juan was doing that daily. That is a superstar, not the guy that goes up with men in scoring position and can't get a hit. And then later on, with nobody on, he wires it 1 out. Those are good ball players. It's just that you got to be able to produce when the producing needs to be done. And those are the superstar guys. And that reporter didn't get it. And I said, "Well, I'm done with this interview. I'll let you figure it out." Really, I mean, hey, you try. You keep watching. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, you know what? Amazingly enough, I'm staying in a hotel out in Nashville, North Carolina, Juan Gonzalez got upset for something. You know what he does? He takes one of those hotel buckets and tipped the darn thing over in this hotel. So go figure. He's a little upset that day. Eric, you want anything to stand about what we talked about along the lines of the Rangers? Because obviously we have a lot of players that we've talked about. Anything stand out to you?
I mean, I remember Sosa with his career ended up being with the Cubs, but with the Rangers, like it was early in his career. What was your impressions of him?
Intensity. He's very intense. Man, I tell you what, he'd get on second base. I'm coaching third, right? He'd give me that look, and I'm, like, oh no, he's getting ready to steal third here. And then he would. I mean, the guys instinctively knew what to do on the bases, and that's because he got to play a lot down there in the Caribbean all the time because of the weather is conducive to good ball playing all year long. So he took advantage of it, and he paid his dues down there. And dadgum, when he got to the United States, he was a heady ball player too as a young guy because he'd already been through all that stuff. So I got to give him credit. And he got to the big leagues, and he did a good job. So anyway, the steroids thing really kind of irked me, but anyway.
Rick, anything you want? Go ahead, Eric.
What was your reaction to all those guys you were coaching at one point being linked to steroids, whether they were or they weren't?
I don't think they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, to be honest with you, because they cheated. They cheated to get there. And I don't know. I'm not going to name names or anything. Whoever it was, they don't deserve it. I mean, if they put those guys in the Hall of Fame, they got to put Pete Rose in there too.
Yeah, I've always believed that too.
Because it's like which evil's worse? I mean, come on.
Or Shoeless Joe Jackson too.
Well, they'd have to resurrect them and put them in the Hall of Fame as well. And I don't know that there's any commissioner, particularly the one that's going on right now. That guy's lost like a ball in tall weeds.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, he's lost. Like a golf ball. Where'd that go? I think it went in the water. He is really lost. But some of these guys don't have the courage to make these judgment calls simply because they work for the owners. The owners hired them. I'd like to see the players union, and the owners hire a guy. And now you'd see a little bit different story, I think. But as it stands right now, it's one-sided. It's the owner's side, but the players union in the major leagues is pretty damn strong. So they hold the cards too. So it's, that's probably why they contracted 40 teams and now they're paring it down. They're looking at expenses now. The AAA teams and AA teams are very close to all the stadiums now.
Well, amazingly enough, what's interesting, well, you said too, Stan, and I worked in the Florida State League. I've always thought high A ball should be in the Florida State League because you can evaluate talent knowing that these guys hitting totals will be a lot more online because they are in major league parks that they work in. But that
exactly,
is something that could address down the road. But I completely empathize. Listen, I'm a Florida State League guy. I've covered the league many, many years, and
it was a good league.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, that week, a show on that. What's that, Eric?
Scott Boras was an all-star in that league.
Yeah, but for those individuals in our audience who want to know about minor league baseball, Florida State League is, to me, and why they ever moved it from high A is like what Stan alluded to. You just want something a little bit closer to the headquarters, not because it was a smarter move to evaluate talent, but that's out there to debate. Rick, anything else you want to ask Stan about the Rangers and the players that we just talked about?
One of my favorite Rangers growing up was Ruben Sierra. Did you ever see him play?
Yeah. I actually talked to him a few times, and I never really got to know him, but I saw him play a bunch. He played hard, and where did he go after the Rangers? I don't know.
He went to the A's,
Spent
He
some
was in
time
the
in New
Jose
York.
Canseco trade.
He spent some time in New York.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He went to the Yankees.
Well, what about some of the guys, Rick, that I mentioned of these 11? Are there any, obviously you've been a baseball person. We got Gonzalez, Sosa. I mean, I don't know what you knew about Wilson Alvarez and Dean Palmer. And of course, I had the opportunity, as I mentioned earlier in the show, when Wayne Rosenthal, I had a chance to talk to Bonds and be part of their press conference, but turned it down and celebrate with, at that time, the Florida Marlins. And Wayne Rosenthal and I got soaked with champagne. It was the best champagne. Watching the Marlins win, let alone knock out the Giants, that was a double whammy. But the friendship stand that I think we both going to realize, having been in it in baseball, and then when you talk about guys like Wayne Terwilliger who just don't get the recognition, I don't think there's a sport, Stan, and correct me if you differ on this, okay, that you'll make more friendships and relationships than you will in baseball because of the levels of minor leagues that you've had, let alone when you get to the big league level of scouting. I mean, contract 4 teams or not, it doesn't really matter.
No, I mean, when you're on these teams with these guys and you're competing and you got a common goal. I mean, there's a bond right there.
Well, there's a bond even with the reporters too. I remember in Fort Lauderdale where these guys gave me a shaving cream bath there. It was unbelievable, and I had tape recorders breakdown and all that. So it's all part of being a part of the game. And one of the people I enjoyed working with was Stump Merrill of the Yankees, and I know you've worked with Bobby Valentine as well. So we don't have that much time to get into those names, or we could do a lot of name dropping. Hopefully,
Bobby's all right. He's okay. Bobby's good.
But Stump Merrill was unbelievable. He, to me, was one of the best people I've ever worked with.
Well, he was over there when I was there, and he was fun to talk to because he had, he got an audience. He's talking, and that was, I really enjoyed him.
He's a great quote.
Yeah.
And Barry Foote wasn't bad either. So,
Barry's all right. Yeah, he's a good ball player too.
So, meanwhile, our special guest tonight is Stan Hough. I call him a baseball lifer. Since you're listening and watching to the show, Mr. Stan Hough. I don't know. I'm sure we always ask him, are you related to Charlie Hough? I won't tell you how many times you probably heard that question.
Or Aubrey Huff.
Yeah. Well, maybe
FF.
Yeah, maybe your brothers from another mother that nobody knows about anyways, but whatever the case is.
Kind of do have a similarity with each other. Kind of resemble each other.
Let me tell you one quick funny story.
Sure.
In spring training, my number was 2, and I had Huff, H-O-U-G-H, on my back. Bobby Valentine was number 2, and Charlie Huff had H-O-U-G-H on his back. So when I was walking out, most of the time I'd hear, "Hey, Bobby, give me an autograph," and I'd sign Bobby Valentine. Charlie, give me an autograph. I'd sign Charlie Huff. I'm signing Charlie Huff and Bobby Valentine.
There you go.
I told them both that I was doing it, and they got the biggest kick out of it. So I kept them off your back. Don't worry.
Well, you know what? I'm sure that in some ways they probably appreciated it. And one thing about baseball, too, that I've known, all the people I've met through the years, I think some of the baseball people have some of the best sense of humors on the planet. Then again, when you're playing 162 games, okay, regular season, mind you, that doesn't count spring training and postseason. You're probably playing 190, 200 games a year with that said. So,
you got to count all the games in spring training too.
Yeah, no, I know you're probably 190, and meanwhile the NBA's worried about downsizing. We're not getting into that conversation at all.
Right. How many games you play with? Well, one year I caught 100 games. So, I went home and I was beat. I was beat up, man, I was tired. I needed to rest.
So, but meanwhile, hey, this Sports Exchange, my name is Scott Morgan, Motor City Madmouth. Please be joined by Eric Katz, Rick Curdy, and our special guest this evening is Stan Hough. We really are looking forward to having Stan on more shows. Tonight was opportunity to introduce Stan to our audience, as well as talk about stories and future shows, what we're going to do, as Stan's going to give us his perspectives about the game in itself. Tonight was just more of an opportunity to get to know Stan, and we're so delighted that he had a chance to join us. So,
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
We're looking forward to working with you, Stan.
I can't wait.
Me too.
Yeah,
your knowledge of baseball and your stories are amazing.
You're part of the family now.
So, all right. So, Eric, with that said, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Sports Team News, or you can check out my work on bellyupsports.com covering Wisconsin Badgers football.
Very good. And also, I should point out, Eric Cass will be one of the co-hosts for Fire Up Wisconsin. It'll actually debut on June 13th. He'll be paired along Candy Ebling. Eric, I'll be on it, and Mark Mancini as well. So, we're looking forward to getting Eric ramped up for that. And don't worry, Stan, we're going to keep you busy. We just have to make sure that you have baseball stories in every place that we're doing these bad boys. All right. Mr. Rick Curdy, I'm handing it off to you.
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. You can go on there and sign our petition to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte. We're also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and on LinkedIn as well under Rick Curdy. And if you have any questions or want any information, my email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
And meanwhile, Rick does a sensational job with our social media, and he'll down the line get a show, Fire Up Carolinas, that we're working on times and things organized. So he's in there, but he does a great job on our social media to make sure all of our written content as well as our broadcast content gets out there. We're eternally grateful there. All right, Stan the man. You think we're going to let everybody know how they get hold of you? At least you can mention your LinkedIn account. Put it out there, Stan.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. That's about all I know.
That's good enough. If it weren't for LinkedIn, I wouldn't know you in the first place.
I'm not on Facebook or any of that other stuff. I was on Twitter, but I got tired of that. So, and I got tired of Facebook too. So what the heck?
Well,
anyway,
nothing wrong with that. All right. As far as we're concerned, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Manmouth. You can find the broadcast at www.southfloridatribune.com. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Our Twitter account, have to have it, Stan, because that's how we do business here, at Tribune South. Okay, and then South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, you can find the shows as well. Please subscribe. And cost anything but a little bit of effort, okay? And all of the shows on our network are there. And more importantly, you can also listen to the audio portion of them through iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts as well. So you get it out there. Also want to thank Candy Ebling for sensational work with the website. Of course, now she's getting some broadcast responsibilities. Without Candy, wouldn't be able to get all the content up there as well as the broadcast. So we're eternally grateful for her. And she gets a taste of the microphone soon enough. Mr. Katz, Mr. Concrete Dump. And since Stan went out there and managed in Ottawa, obviously Eric's nickname is indicative of Olympic Stadium. I figure anything that he talks about, he won't make any friends in Montreal, but then everybody knows it's Concrete Dump. We have Ottawa, Montreal connected about an hour away, but Eric got a new nickname out of it. So meanwhile, Stan, thanks again for joining us on this edition of the Sports Exchange. And on behalf of my incredible crew, we want to thank you for joining us and continue to follow what we've got. So good night, everybody, and we will catch you the next time. Bye-bye.
Good night.